Um, yeah.
Okay, now we're cool. All right, folks. Recently, you might have seen me do a video on YouTube. I posted a video by a lady called Claire Edwards, which was basically a declaration, a statement, a notice that she gave to the government. Sitting next to her at the table, and someone who's been helping her in this action and with his own notices of liability, is a guy called Stephen Whybrow. And I've brought him on to have a bit of a discussion to talk about what's going on in Austria, what they're doing in Europe, the sort of pushback that we're trying against this whole COVID scamdemic, which is getting completely out of control. And even to the point now that I think Ticketmaster has said that people are going to need proof of vaccination in order to buy tickets to ball games and whatever concerts. You're going to need to have your health passport to do all of this sort of stuff, folks. So it's really important that we push back. And the action Stephen has made is a notice of liability, is basically taking the fight straight to them. And I think it's a good idea. So I'd like to introduce Erin Clare and Stephen Whybrow to the conversation. Thanks for coming and having a chat with me, guys. Good to have you on. I don't have many people on, so it's good to have someone on and to talk about this. But just give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what your action is that you're doing in Austria at the moment, if you would say.
All right, so I think I'll just start. My name's Stephen Whybrow, and I'm a free investigative journalist. I'm not paid by anyone, so I just go by free donation, in full trust that if I'm doing the right thing and I'm on course to do what's necessary, to free this planet of this criminal network that is trying to take everything over, then I'll be taken care of. And the thing is that we've had, since the 8th of May, we've had a festival for freedom in the middle of the city of Linz, which is like the third biggest city in Austria. And we've been having the festival every single week. So what has been happening, and that is since 2020, since the coronavirus crisis, beginning of May. So it's now reached the 28th time this week on Friday that we are there. And as I was speaking there every single week, holding a speech about all sorts of things, how what's connected with COVID, and basically talking about this whole system of slavery and how to get out of it, giving people a little bit of background information about natural law, and basically information I think is really vitally important for people to grasp and understand. And after some time, I thought that's not enough for me. I don't just want to be standing there and doing the same thing over and over again and just telling people and just basically staying with one level of action. So I decided to really get involved. And the one thing that I thought was really important in the whole COVID crisis is the aspect of liability. Because basically the way I see it, after being involved in explaining the situation about 5G, which actually you, Max, brought the attention to me, or brought my attention to the topic of 5G. When I listened to your incredible insights into the topic very early, you were one of the first people really talking about 5G, and that really activated me to get involved. And then suddenly the whole COVID scam started. And the one thing that I realized is that it's a cover for implementing 5G and for implementing the smart grid. And I think one of the things that's not often mentioned with COVID is that it's actually a mechanism to get out of liability, because suddenly all the people are dying of COVID and no one has to take responsibility, because you've got this so-called virus that has never been isolated and that is killing all the people now. So no one has to take responsibility. And therefore, I was guided to write a notice of liability and basically just go to the kingpin of this pyramidically structured governmental structure, like the one man you can still face, before it goes into the unseen realm. And that's why I decided to send it to the president of Austria, because he's in a position to dissolve the government, which is taking orders by a criminal network. And that's sort of like my background. And so, yeah, I want to give it over to Eril.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool that you just said to the president or the prime minister of Austria, sent it straight to him and notice a liability. Didn't he disappear a couple of days ago. Of course, that was
Exactly.
probably just a coincidence, wasn't it?
That obviously, yeah. Let's just say it's a coincidence. There's always a coincidence. So let's just take it
Yeah.
like that. Or maybe there's more to it. But the wording, you see, the wording is very interesting because it actually said that the president has fallen. You know. So I actually
Yeah.
also read in codes. So it's like on an energetic basis because this the sort of approach that I took with the notice of liability, and I want to go deeper into it. The approach that I took is a complete maverick approach. So why do I do this? There is no structure to it because you see, most people they don't take action with a notice of liability because it's all about, well, what should I include? Oh, am I missing something? Or do I have to do this first? Oh, did I forget something? And they don't even start doing it. Whereas when you know that the one thing that the system doesn't want you to do is to be a maverick, to go with your heart and just tell them from your heart how you view the situation. And I want to go a little bit more into how it's structured, but that's basically the basis to completely do something that they don't expect. And at the beginning of my notice of liability, I actually have a poem of a child of the new earth, which, you know, that just came to me. And it's actually also something that really touched me, what you did one day where you read Children of the Earth, or what was it, this poem that you wrote. And it brought tears to my eyes. It touched me so much.
Right.
And that was actually, is also one of the things, you know, that reminded me of that it's when you can touch people's hearts, that's actually an action that can really go quite far in reaching a lot of people.
Yeah, well, when you break down all the red tape and you just go with your heart, it really does make a difference. That's what I've done the whole time. I've just forgotten all of the other stuff and just gone with what my heart said. So what's your view on this, Errol? With what's your involvement in this?
Yeah, well, what I want to say is there is no solution to the problem within inside the boundaries of the problem. In other words, there's no solution to the matrix. There's no solution to the matrix within inside of the matrix. So you have to come outside. You have to step outside and analyze the situation so you can see it for what it is. And then step into your own sovereignty and power and come into your heart space and act upon your heart space. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And that's what you've kind of done.
Yeah, we're all looking up to institutions and, you know, governmental power structures for solution, but that's not where the solution is. Everything is controlled. Everything is controlled opposition, and the solutions are not going to come from the program. You have to step outside the program and resolve it yourself. It starts from the self. And the more
that's why I haven't really gotten involved in too many movements and things as well. Like even within the resistance, the so-called resistance, realizing how much of this is controlled as well. I mean, it's got to come from the heart. It's got to be individual action coming from the heart. And if people step into that, realize that what we're dealing with here is just people. They're just people. The King of Austria, whatever, he's just a guy in a suit. He's just a flesh and blood man. You can speak to him and treat him on that level. Equality, total equality for everybody, and come from your heart and just say things as they are, and you make a difference. That's kind of where do you expect to go from here? What's your next plan? What are you doing now?
Well, basically, because with 5G and this real threat that we're facing, you know, they're talking all about COVID. And to be totally honest, you know, I can't listen to hearing about the PCR test anymore. I'm not interested. Actually, I'm not fucking interested. It's totally ridiculous. And I mean, it's okay to understand the details of it, you know, and that it doesn't test for a virus. But basically, it's all about the threat of 5G and AI, and actually something that is a takeover that we can see. You know, I mean, what the hell is going on our planet? You know, when we've lost that, and that's a conservative estimate, 80% of our insects, you know, they're targeting the bees. They're killing the trees. You know, this is all scientifically proven, how the water can't be taken up and all the nutrients by the trees, you know, through this electromagnetic radiation. So, and there's an insight, you know, they always downplay the most important thing. So there's no problem with 5G, no problem with the Gs before that, but that is exactly the problem. You see, this is a takeover that is happening right now, that is being orchestrated through the institutions of government and through all the institutions there. And that's what we really need to face. And what is very important also for me to understand is that us as human beings, we have the first stake in this. We are the central key to all of this, and nothing is possible without our consensus, you see? And if we take power and if we really work on ourselves and find the courage, find the self-love, and really get going and get into action and really just see that once you get going, you know, the most difficult thing is to get the motor going, you know, to have momentum on your side. That's the most difficult thing, to get the momentum, because how do you start? Well, just start with small actions and actually you'll begin to like it, you know. And once the motor is running, then basically what I've experienced in my life is you're just being guided to the next stage. There is no plan in what I do. There is absolutely no template for this, because how should I face a multi-trillion infrastructure project that is going to destroy every single thing on the planet and every living thing? The only place where I can go to is my heart, and just trust in the process and just start in facing the system. Because there's also the aspect, you know, of the new age hijack, which would tell us, you know, oh, this whole thing is just inside, you know, and there are no dark forces out there. You know, you only have to focus inside and you meditate and you get into a state of balance and the world will change for you. Well, no, that's untrue, because as I learned from a great man who I also deeply respect, Mark Passio, you learn about the Trinity process, and that things only really change when you apply the knowledge that you've gained. So what I also challenge people that are watching the alternative media and informing themselves every single day, what are you doing with that knowledge? It's no good in keep listening to me, listening to Eril, or listening to you, Max. What are you actually doing with that knowledge? Because wisdom is only applied knowledge, which is the only real power in the universe. And that's the thing, you see, taking action. And that's what people really need to get a grasp of, that it's us that have to do it individually to find our true purpose, what we came here to do, and then do it together, assist each other in taking action.
And the first step is do not comply to any of their measures. Simple. That's all we got to do. Do not comply. Carry on running your businesses. Carry on walking into shops without muzzles, and just carry on living your lives the way you do. And if everybody did that, what are they going to do? They don't have enough manpower to enforce policing.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I haven't complied with any of it since the whole lockdown started. When they told us that we weren't allowed to leave our suburbs, I started going out and doing walking talks out in the mountains and stuff. Like, you know, I just refused to comply with any of it. My whole attitude towards these people, anyone in a uniform or anything, is, who the fuck are you? You know, why do you believe you have a right of ownership over the vessel that I inhabit? You know, can you show me a contract bearing the wedding signature of God, which gave you possession of me, please? You know, because, you know, if you're wearing a uniform and got little government insignias and stuff on you, well, ultimately you work for me anyway. So why am I taking orders from you? You know, if I'm not causing harm, injury or loss to any another living man or woman, then what's all this about? You know, and if we created a legal system to prevent the causation of harm and provide remedy when harm is caused, how come the legal system is now the major source of harm in our society? I think things are a little bit topsy-turvy. So, yeah, it's having that attitude. That's what people don't understand. That's what I love about what you're doing, because it's simply being you and saying, hey, this is what I feel and here it is. Who the fuck are you that you believe you have a right of ownership over me? If people just did that, if people remembered who and what they were and who and what they are, we could change the world in a day. I've been saying this for so many years. It's been incredibly frustrating to see. But and what people have to understand is that the COVID is a massive fraud. It's a huge crime against humanity, and it really is about all of the steps and guidelines that they're bringing in to protect us from COVID, which is simply ushering us into this smart grid. Total control over every single aspect of your lives, even to the point of you having your temperature. You know, if you've got a little temperature, you've got a flu or whatever, no disease anymore. It's all COVID. You know, COVID has cured all world diseases. So people have got to see what this control grid is that they're stepping into. There's been reports coming out where they wanted to bring the military in to start testing kids at school in Liverpool. Ridiculous stuff that we're hearing. Like I said, these health passes to even buy tickets to ball games or tickets to concerts, or you're going to need a health passport to get into a supermarket. And it's not about the health passport. It's simply about tagging you like cattle. That's what this is about. So it's imperative that people start doing exactly what you're doing and pushing back.
Exactly. And what I also wanted to say here is, because you said that we have a legal system that actually regulates what happens, you know, with the causation of harm, and that you don't have that. But actually, you see what is coming, like everything is being exposed to the light now. We're actually seeing what's really going on. And one of the key things that just dropped into my lap this year was a book called Government of the Shadows by Eric Wilson. And he's an expert on international law from Australia, actually, University of Melbourne. A very interesting book. And he wrote the first article, which was the only article that I read. And I didn't need any more. It totally blew my mind. And it was called Deconstructing the Shadows. And he went into the field of parapolitics and criminal sovereignty. And I'd never even contemplated these concepts. And the way he explained it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And he was explaining the mechanism by which they're getting away with it. And it's through the mechanizations of what has become known as the deep state, the national security deep state, and basically how government is set up. Because you see, we know about the secret society network in the background, Jeffrey Epstein connection of pedophilia and Satanism. With Jimmy Savile in 2012 when that was exposed, okay? That's deep in the shadows. We know about this, okay? And the one thing with the notice of liability which is important to grasp is how government is set up, the structure of it. And what he explains in the book is that there's two parts to government. And it's basically like an iceberg, okay? So you have the iceberg above the water, which is the liberal representative government that people vote in. And what's underneath that iceberg is the deep state, the national security deep state, which people don't vote in, the permanent government, as David Icke calls it. What happens is, and it's very crucial to understand this, is how does legitimacy happen? How does a government become legitimate? And it's through the work of Edward Bernays that we find the key to how democratic society is built up and based upon, which is on one of the books, as you probably know, is Propaganda, written in 1928. And another book that he wrote was The Engineering of Consent. So legitimacy is directly dependent on forming a consensus, which people go by. It's the rule of the majority. So you just go along with whatever happens. And what happens is that throughout the years, now we are like, you know, Austria, for example, has been a member of the European Union since 1995. Okay. And the beginning of the European Union, you know, you can pick it up in 1993 with the Maastricht Treaty and 2009 with the Lisbon Treaty. Like, who can actually remember, and everyone has read it before, but who can remember that with 2009, the Lisbon Treaty, you have no constitutions anymore. It's all just a game. If you've even had it before that, you see? And that's where you have the criminal element that has taken over every government. And here in Europe, you've got the European Union, and you've got these supranational organizations that have taken over these countries. And now with COVID, this is all coming into light, who's really running things, you see? And the way they do this is they make everything happens through what's the word that I'm finding here, is
the engineering of consent, as you were saying.
Yes.
See, they don't even have to engineer consent. They don't even have to have people go with public consensus and think, oh, the majority is doing it anymore. the majority doesn't even have to believe it. The TV will tell you that the majority believes it, and everyone will go, oh, okay, it's on the news.
Mhm.
That's the incredible part, is that you can have a population out there where 90% of the people know it's all bullshit what they're being told. But if the TV tells them, oh, everyone's going along with this, so then they will just go along with it. It's incredible, absolutely incredible, the programming that
And
that people.
what I
are
wanted to
setting
jump because I've just realized it again. So it runs the engineering of consent is actually also habits. You see, people form habits, and it suddenly becomes a habit after years that government is criminal and they get away with everything. So that's how the criminality is inserted into the structures of government, and people get used to it, and therefore criminal sovereignty is legitimized through that, because people are just, oh yeah, that's what governments do, and they always get away with that. That's the trick. Now, the way you can counteract that is, so they engineer consent, which is brainwashing, the engineering of consent through the masses. But the only thing that can counteract that is when you realize that you are a sovereign being. And it can be 99 million people thinking the same way. When you are one who realizes that you are born sovereign, you are born free, it is your birthright by source to exercise that freedom and to actually challenge every single party that is trying to tell you you're not free. You have to challenge them. Now, how do you challenge them? Liability. It is liability. It's right in front of you. The mind control mechanism is trying to tell you government always gets away with it, when it is not. Everyone is always responsible for their actions under natural law. And that just needs to be invoked. You have to think like a child. You just ask, well, who's doing this? Well, it's the government. Okay, so who's in government? Go and write to him. All right, but what would the parents say? Oh, you can't do that. Why not? That's the problem. We don't face the problem. We hear from a lot of people also that, oh, you need to get away from the cities. No, you take back your cities. You have to think differently. You have to invert everything that they've inverted. You're not running away, because they've got the 5G satellites placed everywhere. You're not going to be able to run away from it. Now's the time to face it. And it goes through liability, because that's what they don't want you to know. By just having proof that they've received something, just the information that's contained in it makes them liable, because they're liable anyway. That's the thing.
That's the thing. People don't realize that their own sovereignty, and that if anyone is damaging you, then they're liable for that damage. That's an interesting thing. And you're totally speaking my language there. That's something that I've said to people for years, is that you are born sovereign. And all these people who go through these steps of, you got to send back your birth certificate to the Vatican and all this. So I say to them, if you've got to fill out any form at all, or fill out any document to establish your freedom, how free do you think you are to begin with? If I'm not sovereign, someone please show me proof of claim that I'm not sovereign. Like I said, show me a contract bearing the wet ink signature of God, which gave you possession of the vessel that I inhabit. So that you start from that point. I'm sovereign. If you're claiming I'm not, show me how. It doesn't matter what you wrote down on paper, all this sort of, it's all rubbish. It doesn't matter about that, because this is two hearts communicating, two living men, flesh and blood, communicating with each other. What makes you assume? How do you believe you have a right of ownership over anybody else? That's the approach that people have to have, and that's great about what you've done and the attitude you've taken in writing out this notice of liability and taking it to the president. Because like I said, if the legal system is there and it's causing harm, then how is it a valid legal system? How is it there to protect law and uphold law when it's actually damaging natural law by its very existence? So and it's great that you've had that approach and you've sort of taken the bull by the horns. And I like the idea of taking the cities back as well. Although I don't like cities. I couldn't live in a city. So I mean, you guys who live in the cities, fine, take it back. I live out in the country. I always have. I couldn't. I don't even go in there. I can't stand the place.
Taking the land back. When we're taking the cities back, we're taking the whole land back, not just the city.
Yeah.
And also,
I know what you're saying, and I completely agree with it. And it's the approach you need to have, because like what they're rolling out is a complete system, and it's only acquiescence in people's minds that it's happening. Know who and what they are. That's the problem. That's the key to the whole thing. Like I said, if people just had that realization, that epiphany, we could change the world in a day. If people just had this epiphany that, oh my God, I have value, and everyone had it all at once, we could change the world in an instant. You know, people stopped tolerating wrong behavior, started doing the right thing, and refused to step outside their moral compass, the world would change in a day. And that's kind of the approach you've had with this liability notice.
And people also have to realize that there's no such thing as rights. It's an illusion. We don't need rights, because why would we need rights if we're born free? So when we go out and protest about our rights and how we want our rights back, okay, they're laughing at us because they know that it's an illusion. There's no such thing. So we're wasting our time and energy. You don't protest for your rights. You just take back your sovereign freedom.
You just stand in it. You just be sovereign. Like I said, if someone's claiming I'm not sovereign, show me how. Yeah, human rights. Yeah, it's human rights. It's like Marx says, what's a human right? It's the opposite of a human wrong.
Yeah, well, what does it mean? The right to go and buy a coffee from Starbucks? I mean, what the hell is that? You know?
Yeah, I'm just doing it because I want to do it. It isn't that I have a right to do it. I'm just doing it because that's what I want to do. That's the approach. Yeah.
Freedom doesn't need rights, and we're free.
And that's the reason, in my opinion, why they've even created constitutions, and human rights, because it is giving us a license. Oh, you can do that. Bullshit. You see, you have to take the whole thing away and realize that one of the definitions of a system is just the order of a thought majority. Here we go again. Propaganda, engineering of consent, mass mind control. The number one biggest problem we have in this world is mind control. It is not the elite or so-called elite. I call them the kakistocracy, as you also say. I learned it from you, actually. I said it in the Age of Truth interview also. It is a kakistocracy. And the biggest problem we have is not them. It is us sitting on our asses and listening to other researchers all the time and just getting the new, I know more about the PCR test now, when we're always just observing the shadow projections on the wall of Plato's cave. And no one's saying we need to get the fuck out of this cave. It's never been about Corona. It's been about getting out. It's the thing that is timeless, that has always been important in evolution. You either choose evolution, which is synergy with the organisms around you, with the natural world, and being kind to your human beings and strengthening those relationships, or you take the other path of involution, which is Satanism and division and master-slave mentality, as Mark is the expert on. You see? And that's what's really going on, to understand what is the problem. And it is mind control. It is there right with us. And we need to help each other to break out of that mind control. Because every single day when I wake up, my degree of awakening is only measured to the degree that I'm ignorant. There's levels of awakening, you see? And to just realize, that we're here to experience that awakening. But you're not awake when COVID is a scam. You're not awake when 9/11 was an inside job, you see? And that we really need to get to that realization. And also, have you realized now also, because we really need to expose things, because that's also part of what we're doing by taking down the cabal in our country and actually taking the country back and actually taking the whole planet back. Why should I think small? You see? We need to take our whole planet back. What they're doing right now is that the issue of terrorism is also coming forward now again. Have you realized?
Oh, yeah.
Building up
there's
as the
people,
problem.
the truth community are now being classed as terrorists. Anyone who spreads misinformation. That's the new buzzword, misinformation. They're taking down the president's tweets as misinformation, taking down anything on Facebook which is questioning the US election as misinformation. That's the new keyword. And it's what you were saying before about the deep state and the state of the iceberg. It's really important to understand that. People think of the state and the deep state, and they think that there's a legitimate government there that's really trying to guys behind the scene that are working to fuck them up and do all the nefarious stuff. And what I've been trying to explain to them is, no, it's the deep state is what happens when they close the doors and turn the TV cameras off. All you're seeing on the surface is this little puppet show of talking heads, which are all being controlled by the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, all of these world groups around the world, which are never elected. They're always in place. The permanent government, like you said before, and all of these puppets are put in front, and that's what you see. And you think that this is actually a legitimate government that's working to create change. It's not like that. And we've got to get this whole concept of authority out of our heads, our belief that we need these people to look after us and we need all these governments and all this rubbish. You know, the only reason we need governments is to protect us from other governments, you know. It's crazy. If we didn't have the governments, we wouldn't have any of the problems. All of the problems are actually manufactured. They're all legislated into existence. And it's like you say, why do you need a constitution? That's why I've got people, constitutionalists here in Australia, wanting to get me on board and promote their political parties and take it back to the constitution and recognise the Queen as the sovereign. And I'm like, well, what do I want to recognise her as a sovereign for? What do I need anyone to write down anything on paper to tell me what I am? If I'm not what I believe I am, show me proof of claim. You know, that's the attitude people have. They've got to bring it back to themselves, you know.
Yeah, it's all a trap to pull you back into their system again. You know,
it always is. It always is. So what else do you want to say, you guys? I'll give you the floor a little bit. What do you want to get out to people?
Well, they're really going ahead with trying to set up conspiracy theorists as terrorists now, and that's been their long plan anyway, but now they're trying to put it into works because they've reached that level now where they can't afford for people to call the scam out for what it is anymore, so they're going to begin to demonize people who speak against them. So that's why they've begun to manufacture false flag terror attacks, like we had one in Vienna last week. And something happened in London last night. I don't know much about that, but they're going to do more of that now to try and create false terrorism, which doesn't exist, so that they can pin it on the conspiracy theorists.
I can see a lot of this coming out of the Trump election as well, the pushback, because I mean the Trump election has been obviously a fraud. It's been the most massive electoral fraud I've ever witnessed. Not that there's a left and a right anyway, but I think it's been manufactured to be that way, just to stir up the natives, to get people are going to really want to go in and have, you know, draw blood over this whole election debacle that's happened in the United States. And I think they're all going to be thrown into the conspiracy theorist, truth movement, terrorist basket altogether. I think that's a really big push that's going to come from this Trump election. I think that's one of the reasons they've played it this way. So we're definitely moving into that type of reality.
But guess what? They've already failed. They can't put it off.
Well, that's nice to know. I don't think they can either. I think that there's too many people waking up. I think they've red-pilled the whole world. Yes, nobody that I speak to thinks this virus is real. Nobody. I went and got my glasses fixed a couple of weeks ago. The comment that it's all fun checkout. I said, oh, no, do you think everybody can put a baker, the cancer maker, they all like for it. You know, so, and we've had police here even speaking. There's been a Cops for COVID Truth movement that started here in New South Wales, and there's been a letter written by a leading member of the police force to the police commissioner saying, look, this is a fraud. We don't like the way you are using the police as a tool to push this globalist agenda. There's a worldwide dictatorship being put in place, and the police are being used as a tool to make it happen. And we're enforcing laws against our own families that we don't like. So it's really good to see cops speaking out about this. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a huge pushback. I think this is we could even be heading into a golden age, because this is going to expose all of their criminality. The problem is the climate stuff that's happening. I mean, when I really look at the climate and I look at everything that's happening, I can see us sort of moving into a new solar minimum with all likelihood. That's what's happening. So that's going to be a bit of a wild card as well, with the breakdown of the food chain that we've seen through this whole COVID scam. That's been one of the major knock-on effects of it is the breakdown of the supply chains everywhere around the world. And with we had the whole country burned out here. Now they're talking about killing all the minks in Denmark, and they're killing animals all over the place, killing all the chickens, doing everything they can to break down the food chain, break down the supply chains, and we're heading into a solar minimum, which is going to be, a very, very cold few years. We've got the coldest summer on record here at the moment. It's been freezing. I had the fire on last night. I literally had the potbelly on here, and it's November in Australia. I should be sleeping with a shit on. They're telling us there's a polar vortex. It's a polar vortex that we've never seen before, bringing cold air from it's the stories they come up with. No, it's a solar minimum I'm heading into. So, really interesting times.
Yeah, and I just wanted to get back to the aspect of terrorism also, because the thing is that this is part of what we're doing, also part of the strategy, of how to really take them down. We had an Age of Truth TV show also, which was called Schachmat, checkmate. How do you checkmate the whole system, the whole matrix? What is the end? Can you play the whole game to the end and see? Because one of the things is that when you can solve the root cause of the problem, then the problem has to cease to exist. Now, we know there's a lot of symptoms on the symptom level, like loads of things where you're like, how can we make it through that? But you see the collapse of the food supply. Well, do gardening. You see, nature always produces. So there's always solutions to that. But the root cause of the problem is, let's see, what does Corona really mean? Corona as a code. It's the crown. For me, it symbolizes sovereignty.
Yeah.
When we become sovereign beings and realize that we as human beings are intrinsically connected to this planet as a living organism, and all of these dark, occult, priest class magicians, these black magicians who are very much in the background for a reason, because they're shit scared of facing us. I tell you, they're shit scared of people that recognize their true power inside of their heart. You see, they run the fuck away when it comes to Mother Earth. They run the fuck away when you are enacting the will of the source. Yep. You see, we are connected to the source of life. I never use the word God. You see, source is what I'm based in. Together with Mother Earth, they run all away, and we have the first stake in all of this. So when we learn the lesson of being sovereign, which means that you take responsibility for your own actions, that's when you can hold politicians responsible for their actions. When you first have to do it, and then you can hold them liable. You see, that's how it works. And now they're trying to frame terrorism, that we are terrorists, and conspiracy theorists, are the new terrorists. You see how desperate they are. But by exposing it and talking about it, it's already gone.
Dissolved. It
is dissolved, because as long as the roots of wickedness are hidden, it is strong. When it is revealed, it dissolves. And when it is when it is I got that one wrong. But generally, when you reveal it, it dissolves, it perishes, it goes away.
Yeah.
And the darkness it has to be faced. We have to face it now, you see, because then we don't know what comes next. You see, what does awakening really mean? What is the next octave? We can't predict it, but we have to face the darkness, because it's the yin and the yang. It's not about being an enlightened being and just full of light when you've got the yin and the yang in balance.
Yeah, a lot of people have a really hard time processing what energy that they perceive to be negative energy, and it's simply a failure to be able to process certain forms of light, because all information is light, really. You're bringing light to the darkness, and you've got to be able to do that. It's people's refusal to look into the darkness that allows the darkness to perpetuate. And you only have to take a tiny little bit of light into the darkness, and the darkness is gone. Doesn't matter how much darkness you take into the light, it doesn't affect it in any way. But if you take any light to the darkness flees. So it's an incredibly powerful thing. It's an incredibly powerful thing, and we are incredibly powerful, and that's the key to the whole thing. If people would, and I've been saying this on air for 14 years, like ever since the very first film I did and the first radio show I ever did, it's just if people would just discover themselves and remember who and what they are, the whole world would change in a day. And that's why I love about what you're doing, because you're taking that to the next level. Where do you think this is going to go from here? What's your next step? What are you going to be doing? You've got this notice of liability. Have you got a copy of the notice of liability? Have you got any type of a template or any type of a thing that people could use to apply this to their own countries or their own surroundings? I mean, ultimately, it's got to come from yourself, from your heart. But perhaps they could look at yours and they could see how they could structure their own, and realize that, the government, as I said before, the legal system and the government pretends that it's there to serve you and protect you, and yet everything it does is causing harm to your life. So therefore, they are liable for this harm. So you should address that. And if you address it as one heart to another, one living man to another living man, there's nothing they can do about it. Don't think you've got to go and approach the government. The government is a dead entity. The tax office is a dead entity. You can't speak to the dead, but within that entity, within that place, there's somewhere who put their wet ink signature on a piece of paper and is therefore liable for the actions of what is carried out through creating that document. So that's the approach people have to have. So is there some way people can get involved, and what sort of things can you offer for people who want to do that?
Well, the document is still right now in German, because I've stepped back since we've taken that action, because there was a lot of action happening in the space of 2 weeks. And it's underneath the press conference video of Age of Truth. So you can find it there. I can also send you a PDF that you can link to the video, where I'll either translate it into English or make bullet points with the most basic information, because it's just about orientation. You don't need any format. You don't need any particular form. You don't have to think what you leave out or what you're not. What it is based on is your birthright to freedom and to face what is restricting your freedom and wants to be your authority and your mummy and daddy, although you didn't ask for it. And you remove your consent. That's when Neo says no in the Matrix. That's all you have to do. Because when you step out of the brainwashing and what the thought majority is thinking, you say, it's actually more important what I'm thinking, because I'm doing the new bit. I'm doing the new shit, and that's really cool. That's what people, and then we'll create the new normal, you see. Oh, this guy's acting free, let's do that too. And then you create the new normal, you flip the whole thing on them. And the next course of action, you see, that's also important to get, is that there was a lot of action building up to then put the notice of liability there. It was all filmed by Age of Truth. It went out, more than 40,000 people have watched it. So it's in the collective unconscious doing its thing, working energetically. And this was an electrical action. So the most important thing that I'm doing right now is retreating, have no stake in the outcome, which I also learned from you, Max, to let go of any stake in the outcome, and then you activate the magnetic component. Electricity is when you send, when you do things, and then you retreat and you just relax back into yourself, go into the mountains, do what you really like doing, connect to nature, and you activate the magnetism, because you can only receive when you stop sending, you see. And that's the whole basis of mine is also based on esoteric principles, that you balance the electricity with magnetism, and just what comes along as the next stage, like for example a press conference, but only when the time is right. So that's when no one can touch me, you see, because I'm acting through the will of source for truth, and therefore I'm doing what I'm here to do. And that is what most people don't understand and know, the best protection you can have. People will be thinking, oh, why is he not being arrested? He might be controlled opposition. No, I'm protected by the highest source, because I'm taking action. When you just sit at home and hope they won't come for you, they are coming for you. You see?
That's what I've always said as well. I totally agree with everything you said there. What were you going to say, Aaron?
Standing in the action within your own truth is your very protection.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've always said. You get to a certain point where you're resonating at a certain point and they can't touch you. You don't call that in. It's an emotional mirror. Life is an emotional mirror. It's a reflection. And if you're sitting there going, oh, they're going to come for me. Well, yeah, they're going to come for you. It's what I've said to people who are constantly in a state where they've never got any money. It's because they're always worried about money. I mean, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm never without, I get by. I've always got it there when I need it because I don't even concern myself with it. And I don't worry about things like that because it's a reflection. If you start stressing out about things, the universe goes, oh, really? Do you want a bit? Okay, have a bit more. You know, are we getting it yet? You know? So it's an emotional mirror. And if you know who and what you are and you simply stand in that, you can, as I've said, I have a saying, if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And I've been doing that for years, you know, and you can't have a stake in the outcome because it's an unfolding experience every minute of every day. You don't know what's coming next. So how can you have a stake in that, you know? So, yeah, and if you're too focused on what the end goal may be, I mean, sure, you've got an idea of what you want to happen, but if you're too focused on that goal, you're going to miss out on all these little paths along the way that could have led you to somewhere absolutely incredible that you didn't even know was there because you were too focused on that end thing. And then when it didn't happen exactly the way you wanted, you're disappointed, you feel like you failed. You didn't allow it to just unfold and grow organically, which is what every idea does if you allow that idea to blossom. You know, when you have an idea, don't try to control it. Let it become its own life force. That's how to change things, you know. So I love what you're doing, brother.
Thanks. Yeah. Do you want to add?
Anything.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it's all about. The new paradigm. It's also a distinction between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. You see, because for example, right now, common law can be really well used to open up your business. You see, that's very good to do that. But there's a difference between common law and natural law, which are principles, the most hidden information on the planet. I call it the building blocks of knowledge. When you don't have access to the building blocks of knowledge, then you don't have access to the rules of the game of life. When you don't have access to the building blocks of knowledge, you'll always have the Freemasons build their new world order power structure instead of you building. You see how this works?
Yeah.
So common law can be well used now in the lockdown to open up your business. Fine, you do this with contract and on common law and so on. But there's a restriction to that also, because we need to get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that we've never been free. And the only way to get free is to take responsibility and be sovereign, shine that light and realize that the masters in the background, the black magicians, the dark occult priest class, that's what really runs this system. It's not the George Soros. They make tea.
Satanic.
They make tea for the real people. They're in the shadows for a reason. And when we shine our light from our heart, they run the fuck away and they'll leave this planet, you see, and we're taking the whole planet back. That is what this concept that I really want people to grasp. You don't have to run away anymore. We have to realize that it is an inversion force. That's why Satanism inverts everything. We need to re-invert everything and see, wow, we can have absolutely everything, not just a little bit.
Stand. Time to stand.
So, anything you'd like to close with, guys? You probably should end it here. Otherwise, people have the attention of a goldfish, unfortunately, these days, most of the world. But I'm sure it's been a good conversation. But you can't keep it going on too long, because they go. Oh. But anything that you'd like to close with this talk, guys? I love what you're doing. It's been really good to see people getting on the ground and doing what you're doing and taking the fight to them. And like you say, the notice that they could write out, this notice of liability, it has to come from the heart. I mean, they can look at what you've done and maybe get inspiration from that. But it's basically, you've got to realize it's a two-heart connection. It's one living person dealing with another living person. I'm not letting you use the word person, am I? Because the people will complain about that word. But yeah, one living flesh and blood, human being, man, whatever, dealing with another, and it's the way you've got to approach it. So it's just basically asking why. You know, who are you, and why do you believe you have a right of ownership over me? And it isn't even people, you know, establishing their freedom. It's just people living their freedom, being free, knowing that, because that's what you are. Why do you believe you're not? Is the question, you know. So what would you like to finish with, guys?
Yeah, all I want to say to people is, the only reason why they've been getting away with what they've been doing to you is because you've been allowing them to do it to you by giving your power away to them. So everything they have, which they're using against you, was yours in the first place. So it's time to stand up and take it back. Do not pay attention to them, okay? They don't even exist. They're nothing. They like to tell you that you're nothing, but they are nothing. So come back to yourself, remember yourself, and be free again.
Exactly.
Well
Thank you.
said.
And what I also want to add at the end is what was also key in me doing what I'm doing is that we had the Festival for Freedom. It was never a demonstration. The Festival for Freedom in Linz, in the middle of the city. Every single week we just showed up there. Didn't matter if it's 50 people and a lot of people standing around. It's like, oh, look, now it's week 9 and not a lot of people there. But it's the right people. And you know what changes everything? Continuous action. And that's the problem with people. They start off, yeah, let's live free now for a week. And then, oh, yeah, see, nothing changed. So back onto the couch with the same old behaviors. If you do this every week, and it's a lot of fun. It's a meetup with people, have some music there, do 1 hour of speeches and then, just put the music on and enjoy life. That's what it is. But when you do that continuously, you're building momentum and your own focus is always steering in a direction when you do it every week, because that's how the subconscious works. Most people, they stay only on the conscious mind. But when things really start to bend reality is when you do them repeatedly. And that's where the waves become a tsunami. And that's the reason why I think they're freaking out so much. Because 5G was meant to be implemented until 2025. I know this, you see, and they're rushing everything and they are complete because people are doing it now. And more people are invited to do it because it is fun to face these criminals, because they are clowns. Like Mark Passio says, little clown asses, So just laugh them in the face and just celebrate life and do it every week, because that's what really pisses them off when you have fun with life, because these people are miserable bastards.
Good idea. All right, guys, it's been a great conversation. I'll post this up this evening, and it's been great. And we'll have to catch up and do it again. I love what you're doing and keep it up. And I'll stop the recording here. And thank you for that.
I'll send you some bullet
Where
points.
can
Also.
people find you, by the way? Have you got a website or anything like that? I mean, you send me all the stuff. What's your website? Have you got one?
It's gnosisunity.info.
gnosisunity.info. I'll put a link below for everybody to go and check it out.
From there, people will find the channels. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thank you, Mac.